Andre's presentation was very disturbing for me because I have an Andre. Her name is Sarah, and oh shit, I was sure I wasn't going to get emotional about this, but anyway. Lost her when she was 14 to the streets for 4 years, and it was sheer hell. I totally related to the picture of the parents out in the middle of the night trying to find her. We got her back when she was 18. At the time, I was working with street kids, running a project called Evergreen Center for Street Youth in Toronto, and I knew how to work with street kids, and we were able to put a circle around her, finally got her back. I'm happy to say that she's 30 years old, single mom, good mom, just graduated from U of T, wrote her LSAT and plans to be a lawyer. My next daughter's 32. Amy is an amazing singer-songwriter. She's a trained chef, and she's married to Captain Sean Turner. He's a military chaplain. They've got 2 little guys and another one on the way. The Turners never have girls, so that's why I'm saying got another guy on the way. My son, they live at Petawawa. My son Aaron is 34. Doesn't have time for women. He dates now and then, but he's a brain scientist, visual neuroscience. He's got a posh job at a university in Lausanne, Switzerland, and just having the time of his life. So that's kind of my family's background. Now I want to get the damn ponytail out of the way first, okay? So here's the story of the damn ponytail. Like, I'm 57. Why am I wearing a damn ponytail? My sister-in-law has the same hair color as I do. And a while back, she was diagnosed with a huge stomach tumor. And I thought, well, I'm going to grow my hair in case she needs a cancer wig. So, of course, I had to stand up and tell my congregation what I was doing, just so they didn't think I was freaking out. And a number of them started growing their hair, too. Well, when they took the tumor out, she was fine, and I didn't need to grow the hair any longer, but I'd made the commitment. It's got to be, once it's cut, 3 strands of braid and 10 inches long. So I got a ways to go yet. So that's the ponytail. I want you to take your little white notepad, and these are the only notes you're really going to need to take for this whole session. And I want you to write down 5 bullet points, and they're fairly short, so you should be able to do them fairly quickly. And they're bullet points, so they're not complete sentences. And the first one is, have an inherent mistrust of authority figures. Have an inherent mistrust of authority figures. The second one is, have a belief that impersonal forces control their destiny. Have an inherent belief that impersonal forces control their destiny. The third's a little longer. Exhibit behavior characterized by psychological transference. Exhibit behavior characterized by psychological transference that underlying anger originally elicited by an abuser that will come out when and at whom it is safe. So that's exhibit behavior characterized by psychological transference, that underlying anger originally elicited by an abuser that will come out when and at whom it is safe. Number 4 is did not choose their culture, yet it has an enormous influence on their character and personality. Did not choose their culture, yet it has an enormous influence on their character and personality. And then finally, are preoccupied with today and have no hope for tomorrow. Are preoccupied with today and have no hope for tomorrow. Those are, let me give you a bit more background. I was going to be the prime minister of this country when I was a kid. That was my goal. In fact, I had a mother who encouraged me to that. She said, you want to be the prime minister? I'll be there to support you. Dear old mom is still there. Probably disappointed I'm not the prime minister. I took a year, though, when I was 19 and went to California to a small college. And the buggers made me do this program where I had to go out and do community service. And I worked with fatherless boys in Los Angeles and at an orphanage in Mexico, and it ripped my heart out. So instead of coming back and doing a law degree, I came back and did psychology and started working in the field caring for marginalized people. And it wasn't long before I realized, thinking I knew everything as a 24-year-old with this degree in psychology, sorry, by that time I was 27, I realized, Michael, you know nothing. I'd been working in the field for a while. Where can I learn to get some rubber meeting the road? I'd been raised in a very conservative place. And I thought, I'll go on the police force. And the plan was just for 2 years. Get the shit kicked out of me, learn something about life, and have more rubber meeting the road. Which I did. I got on the police force, and very seductively, I was extremely good at it. Every time I sneezed, I caught a bad guy. And got promoted. I ended up staying 7 years. Some of my cohorts from back then are here today. And I wasn't supposed to be a police officer, but I did. I stayed 7 years, and finally was taking a course. I was continuing my education, and the director ran a project for Yonge Street Mission called Evergreen down in Toronto, and I made the jump. 1 week in fraud detective, next weekend working with street kids. So I did that for about 7 years, and then realized most of the kids that I worked with downtown in Toronto weren't inner city housing project kids. They were from here. They were from out in the suburbs, small town and rural. And they'd suffered horrific abuse in their homes. And I'm going to tell you a story about a girl that I worked with. And they had ended up on the streets in inner city Toronto. And I was kind of out there preaching the gospel of make sure you open projects in these kids' source communities to keep them from coming downtown, because by the time they got to me, they were toast. Only 1 in 10 ever got off the streets. I got the facility to come out to Mississauga, Streetsville, and ended up planting a project called The Dam, and some of the folks from The Dam are here today. And the concept was to dam off the flow of Meadowvale, Streetsville kids from going to Toronto. And we opened a drop-in center, and it works. And I say it works because it's still going today, and it's a great preventative project. Some of this other stuff I've done in my career working with street people. I ran the Scott Mission, a big old barn down in Toronto. And presently I'm with the John Howard Society. John Howard Society's got a bad rap. We don't just work with bad guys. In fact, most of our work is with single moms, pregnant teens, people who've lost their jobs, people living under bridges, people in rooming houses. If you were to walk into my shop at 134 Main today, it would be full of people like that. We have employment services, housing programs, counseling programs. I want to talk about the culture of poverty, and I want to talk about those 5 tenets as they apply to the people that I know a lot of you probably work with. If you're in policing, if you're in social services, if you're in teaching, health services, you're going to work with people that are in the culture of poverty. And I call it a culture because it has very specific tenets. These are 5 of the ones that throughout my work, both here and overseas, been to many different countries, these come out all the time. Those 5 tenets that I had you write down. Rose was 8 years old. She lived in Mississauga. She lived in a fairly nice house with a mom and dad and 3 older brothers. And when she was 8 years old, those 3 older brothers began to sexually abuse her under the threat that if she ever told anybody, they would kill mom. For 5 years, Rose suffered that incestuous rape and often violence. She was 13 and had obviously then started to exhibit a lot of the characteristics of that pain. And again, she wasn't telling anybody, but she was violent. She was inattentive, always looking over her shoulder for who was coming at her next. And her behavior in school was disturbing to the teacher. So the teacher called home to Rose's mom. And Rose remembers the day that mom smashed the phone up on the wall and said, "You've caused enough trouble in this family. I want you out of here now. Pack your bags." She did. She packed a bag, whatever she could take. Did the couch surfing routine. You know what that is? She'd stay with as many friends as she possibly could until the welcome wore out. And finally, somebody said to her, "Well, look, there's a place in Toronto you could go, Covenant House. Why don't you get on the bus and go down there?" And she did. Now, it would have been great if there were some workers there at the bus depot to meet Rose. I was part of a team that actually did that years later, started a project where there were social workers waiting for the Roses getting off the bus. But the guy that met Rose was a pimp, which she didn't know, and he was suave, and he saddled up next to her and said, listen, I can see that you're hurting. I've been there, and I know what to do. Come and I'll take care of you. And he did. Put her up in a hotel for about 3 weeks, bought her food and clothes. One morning of the third week, she woke up to a violent slap across the face. He was on top of her and said, now you repay. He raped her, and he put her out to work in a hotel with prostituting to rich businessmen who liked little girls. So here's this 13-year-old going through that and still full of pain. And of course, much like Andre's story, became addicted to drugs. When she was 15, she didn't look young anymore. She looked old. And of course, the pimp had no use for her, so he booted her out on the street and said, you can take care of yourself. But the drug dealer, she was making a lot of money, which went to the pimp. The drug dealer had some repayment. And he said, you need to pay me. So she hooked up with Rob and Victor, a couple of guys, and they became a street team. And they would do boosting in the stores. They would do some, petty armed robbery in the park. And that was Rose's life, living in squats. I met Rose when she was 18. And I would like some interaction from you, some verbal feedback about, you are one of the two street workers that are walking through the park, and your job is to meet the Roses of this world. You can't do that unless you know what her primary need is as you go to meet her. And I want to hear back from you what you think her primary need would be. Just go ahead.
I work at a food bank here in Mississauga called Homelessness on Lakeshore. It's a Christian base. We see a lot of that to Compass, and we open here at Square One and see a lot of that stuff. I think speaking of my experience, in understanding what the problem is and directing the person or persons to the right entity. At Compass, we have one of them that we use, Leslie Grader, who is our social worker, who anybody at any given time can go and see her when we're open at the Compass.
Okay, he's suggesting that she be redirected. And of course, one of the tenets of the culture of poverty is inherent mistrust of authority figures. Okay? She's not going to take direction from anybody. Feed me. What's her primary need? Acknowledgement? What happened when she got off the bus? She was totally acknowledged. I can see you're hurting. And I've been there, and I'll take care of you. And we know where that went. Keep going. What's her primary need? Conversation? She has conversation on the street. The problem with that is the street people she hangs out with, and if Andre had been here, she would talk more about this, they hide their identity. And your conversations are that shallow. And nobody tells you really who they are. I taught at Humber for 14 years in the police program. I wrote a textbook, and one of the chapters talks about that it takes a long, long time to win over the trust so that you can actually have a deep and meaningful conversation. I don't know. Go ahead. Sorry? She can panhandle. She can prostitute. Money's not really an issue. Sorry? That's close. I don't have a lot more time, so I want to get to the point. You know what she needs? She needs the rebuilding of her self-worth. But how can you ever get to that point where you work with her? Because the other primary need she has is for safety. Not necessarily her safety. I have to be safe. You and I, as the workers meeting her, would have to be safe. What about us would have to be safe? You know what? Again, I'm 57 years old. The ponytail's not really intentional. The earrings are. What's this old jerk doing wearing earrings? Now, I dressed up for you today. Can the guys from the dam stand up? That's how you dress, okay? It's safe. No, go ahead and sit down, thanks. That's right. Your appearance has to be safe. Your agenda has to be safe. It's taken her 18 years to get there. Can you spend another 18 years working with her? Your approach has to be safe. So you and I, and because I'm a man, you would be a woman. That's the safest gender pair on the street, okay? Man, woman. You would walk by in the park, and you would see her. I'd say to you, see that girl there? Yeah, I saw her yesterday. Okay, let's see if she's there tomorrow. You don't even acknowledge her. You walk on by. The next day, same thing. You start to track her a bit. She doesn't know you are. About the second week, you grab an extra coffee. And what would that coffee be? It would be triple. Okay, every street kid drinks triple. And you would have a triple coffee, and you would come by, and you would put it on the park bench she's sitting on, and all you would say to her is, we're from the dam, we're from Evergreen, we're from John Howard, just thought you might want a coffee. And you'd leave immediately before she could throw the coffee at you and say, fuck you. And you would do that for another week or two. Every day. So here you are into almost into the second month. And into that second month, you would start to stop and talk about the weather, something very innocuous. 6 months of doing this before she would finally say, who the heck are these guys? Maybe I'm going to start opening up a bit. And my experience is that after about 9 months, they've learned to trust you enough that they start to embrace you. But you don't find out the real truth, and I'm talking about working with them every single day for 5 years. You don't find out the real truth. They've got these pseudo stories, these pseudo personas that hide what they're so ashamed of. So ashamed. In the program that I have at John Howard, I've only been there a year. I've given the staff a mandate, similar to what I did with the staff at the dam. I don't want a bunch of signs up. They don't have to be told to wash their hands in the toilet. They don't have to be told the rules. That's not, this needs to be beautiful. And I gave them a big budget. And if you walked into each of our shops, we have 9, they're beautiful. And they're made for Rose to be able to come in and say, you did this? Who did you do this for? You did it for me? And then you start to rebuild that sense of self-worth. Okay, I got 5 minutes left. I want to talk about the ladder of care continuum very, very quickly. Because of those 5 tenets, we can start a job training program, we can start an alternative ed program, we can start all kinds of programs, but if we've missed the steps in the ladder of care continuum, we're going to blow it. Rose would be sitting in the alt ed program, the teacher would come over and say, that's not how you do that. She would hear the voices from the past. You've caused so much trouble in this family, I want you out of here. There'd be an expletive and she'd run out into nowhere. The ladder of care continuum starts with street outreach workers who do exactly what he started talking about. They go out onto the street because she's afraid to go in anywhere. The second and most pivotal program is a very low emotional entrance threshold drop-in program. It creates community. So that if you've got an alt-ed program up above that, she runs out, but she runs out into the arms of dear old 72-year-old volunteer Dorothy. Hey, Rose, where are you going? And Rose tells her what she thinks she heard her say, and Dorothy says, what'd she really say? Well, she said, you don't do that. Rose, come here, have a cup of tea. And Rose is back doing the alt-ed program after that. My ladder of care continuum looks like this. Street outreach at the bottom, that pivotal drop-in program, overnight hostel programs, and then detoxification or residential rehabilitation for addictions program, long-term residential program, life skills training program, alt-ed programs, job training, and independent residential program. I wish I had a lot more time to talk with you. I've got maybe 2 minutes if you've got any questions about the stuff that I've talked about concerning the culture of poverty. Great, thank you very much.